What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and, well, we are almost 20 days away from the 30th anniversary of Pokémon, of the entire Pokémon franchise. And naturally, of course, you're going to be seeing a lot of Pokémon content, which really says a lot, possibly this month or even this year. But that being said, we're starting this month off and videos off right by talking about something that I've seen as of recently, like as recently as last year. Talking about what my realistic Pokemon team is. And in all fairness, this is nothing new. As, like I said, last year, I saw a lot of YouTubers basically talking about what their own Pokemon team would be if they were realistic. And honestly, I want to see that. I've even seen the likes of Pokédan and Mystic Umbreon, now known as Mystica, basically making videos about their own Pokemon teams. So I decided, why not throw my hat into the ring? So, kinda makes sense, here we are. And with that, it's time to take a look at what my Pokemon team would be if Pokemon were suddenly made real in our world. Alright. Being said, starting off first, honestly, let's start this off with the first thing I can honestly say. I am a cat person. Always have been, always will be. And in fact, when I was 5 years, like around 4 or 5, no, not 4, 5 or 6 years old, I had a cat growing up. Like a cat that I called Chestnut because he was like a brown cat. Unfortunately, I didn't have him for that long because my mom essentially gave him back to the person who originally gave him to us. And in all fairness, it's kind of weird when you think about it. Which I think the fact that happened is because my mom finds cats to be sneaky. But even with that, I still like cats. So, honestly, in fairness, it kind of makes sense if Pokemon were real, I'd have a few cat Pokemon roaming around. Starting with the main Pokemon that I would utilize or have being Persian. Now, this one is kind of an interesting one, and I'm wondering, I know a lot of people are going to say, why not Meowth? I mean, you obviously wouldn't be spoiled for money if you had Meowth. And that's true. I mean, me and my family are kind of in financial straits here, but the reason why I'm choosing Persian is naturally because of, well, if you haven't heard someone in the background in certain videos, that's Persian. Well, my own Persian. For those who don't know, I have imaginary friends. Yeah, I'm 34 and I still have imaginary friends. And one of them is Persian, who, for those who don't know, is Team Rocket's Meowth. But, yeah, evolved into a Persian. And, yeah, considering that, kind of makes sense as he's been still part of my life for a long time. So, honestly, that's why I'm saying Persian would be part of my team. Excuse me. Naturally, because of that. However, Persian's not the only cat Pokemon, as essentially I would also have both Skitty and Esper, which honestly, while Persian's kind of a big cat, to say the least, kind of makes sense to have a few smaller cats running around, and I actually like both Skitty and Esper, as both are just kind of adorable little cats, basically. With Skitty more or less being the more active cat, due to the fact that it could chase its tail for hours on end and get a little dizzy. And Esper, well, yeah, I think Pokemon Legends ZA kind of proved how kind of adorable Esper is. I mean, because it's still Emma's Esper Mimi, which is just still kind of adorable, to say the least. Plus, I've seen a lot of Meowstic comics, which are kind of funny to see as well. And yeah, I actually like Esper's kind of adorability factor. Speaking of pets, yeah, they're not the only pets that I essentially Pokemon that I have based on specific pets. As essentially, I would also have a Dachsbun on my team. Now, in fairness, for those who don't know, I'm afraid of dogs, which kind of says a lot. I mean, I still have that fear of dogs, but more often than not, if I'm friendly with someone who has a dog, and yeah, more often than not, I will be friendly with them. I will be okay with the dog because I've been around said dog. And honestly, Dachsbun is basically one of them, namely because my uncle, my aunt, and my cousins actually had a dog named Ginger. I think you can understand. I'm not gonna mention the species of dog, because I'm not sure how YouTube would handle the species of dog without censoring it, but you can understand what type of dog it is. But in all fairness, it really does say a lot that I would essentially have a Dachsbun, just being an adorable little dog, like a bread dog of sorts. Plus, I'm not sure, but the name Ginger seems to be popular with the hound class of dogs. Again, don't at me at this, I'm not sure if both are part of the hound class. But again, growing up, my mother actually had a beagle by the name of Ginger, and another YouTuber, PM7, another YouTuber, PM7, actually has a dachshund named Ginger, so I guess I'd say Gingers of the world unite. I mean, or in this case, Dachsbun's kind of a reference to all three Gingers. All three dogs named Ginger that I know of. Yeah. No problem with redheads here. Just saying, I know of three dogs named Ginger. Just saying. Anyway, speaking of pets, I also had some goldfish when I was like 8 or 9. Unfortunately, I didn't have them for that long because I am an idiot and I would forget to either feed them or clean their bowl. Yeah, I was an idiot back then. But the most I remember is that 2 of my goldfish I actually named Goldeen and Sea King after the Pokemon. So it kind of makes sense that, honestly, I'd have to have Goldeen and Sea King as part of my realistic Pokemon team, which kind of remembers the goldfish I used to have as a kid. And possibly I'll remember to feed them and clean their habitat. Yeah. Which, knowing my mind, yeah, there's a fat chance that I'm gonna remember. Yeah, knowing my mind. Right. Pets aside, honestly, there are a lot of other Pokemon I would basically have that I would basically remember or basically have based on specific, well, I'd say, things I like. And honestly, one of the things I like are music and singing. As I always love listening to music. In fact, I still have actual physical CDs in my room. And even so, I love to sing. And I also own an acoustic guitar. Like right over here. Yeah, I had that for some time. That being said, in all fairness, kind of makes sense that, and I would essentially have Pokemon that utilize music. So, honestly, kind of makes sense that I would essentially have both forms of toxicity, the amped form and the low-key form. So, possibly so I could at least jam with them, since they both have aspects of guitars, being an electric guitar and a bass guitar. And so basically, I'd more or less be able to jam with them. And heck, I'd even have another Pokemon I'd have as part of my realistic Pokemon team would of course be Skeledirge, which is a Pokemon who's known to attack with singing. And basically, heck, its signature move is Torch Song, which is kind of an interesting move to say the least. And honestly, yeah, kind of fits with the fact that I love to sing as well. Which really says a lot. But it's not the only starter linked with music that I would have, as again, I would essentially have Rillaboom on my team. Now, if you already know from my favorite Pokemon types list, top 10 favorite Pokemon types list, one of my favorite types is the grass type. So it kinda makes sense that I would have Rillaboom on my team, since it's basically a Pokemon who carries around a wooden taiko drum. And additionally, it's based on a drumming gorilla, which honestly kind of fits as well. And yeah, it's kind of weird that I have like a version of the Maximizers from Pokemon Sword and Shield, but again, I didn't mean for it to happen. They just more or less fit. Yeah, if you hadn't guessed, I have Skeledirge over Obstagoon, so yeah. Additionally, another Pokemon that I would have is the Pokemon Hatena. Yeah, if you hadn't already guessed, its entire evolutionary line are basically known for vibe checking, with Hatterene being able to lash out whenever it's around, strong emotions, and Hatterene basically not liking them at all. Of course, if you hadn't already guessed, I'm choosing Hatena over Hatterene and Hatterene because I guess when you think about it, it kinda makes sense considering I'm on the autism spectrum. In fact, for the most part, I don't like yelling or harsh criticism, to the point that if I'm around yelling or harsh criticism, I will cover my ears as a result, because it's basically scared me. And heck, even as far back as I could remember, I've cried whenever that happened. So, yeah, really does say a lot. This will be continued in part 2.